Welcome to the second Industry Insight vlog. I'm Philip Nothard, Customer Insight and Strategy Director here at Cox Automotive. So today we'll start off with a 90-second overview. We'll look at the first half of the year and what's happened so far. And I'm also here to chat with Stephen Brighton at Hepworth Honda Motor Group about the introduction of RDE that hits us in September of this year. And we'll also finish off with some predictions for what to expect in the third quarter of this year. So quarter one started with a positive note, with 70% of the dealers that we surveyed saying that demand was actually up year on year in February. That soon tailed off, unfortunately, in March, where 10% said that they felt the demand had increased. So that really dropped off, and that carried on all the way through the second quarter of the year so far. So what's happened? Well, political uncertainty has made some customers cautious about their next biggest purchase. We also know that there's hangover from WLTP, and we've got the tax uncertainty that's affected the fleet and business registrations in the new car market. But for new cars, the half-year results have been out from the SMMT, and we know that the market is down 3.4%. That's broadly in line with the expectations that we're still forecasting for the 2.3 million registrations that we expect by the end of 2019. I've heard a little bit of doom and gloom about the numbers, but it's worth remembering what 2016 was a peak, and we're partially due to the heavily pre-registration activities that took place in that year. And we're seeing market return to a normal, sustainable level now. So on a positive note, we see a double-digit increase in fleet volumes coming through the Mannheim lanes in June. We also could see a sign that fleet registrations could pick up in the second half of the year, and unfortunately, used car margins still are a challenge. We are forecasting from a used car perspective a drop in 2019, and again on the back of a 2016 peak, and that was still 7.9 million used car transactions. So in Q1, the big challenge of used cars with low fleet and the wholesale volumes coming through, and that did push values up. In Q2, we've been seeing a slightly different story of volume started to improve a little bit, and we're starting to see values start to dip, and they've continued to dip throughout the year. So one of the biggest changes in terms of a buoyant used car market we are starting to see is this part exchange and missing little bits of odd things in terms of part exchange appraisals. And we do urge dealers that they do need to look at that as an area for the year. And we're now starting to see values coming under a little bit of pressure in the wholesale market and what people are looking for. So looking ahead, the biggest thing that is going to hit the market is the RDE that hits us in September of this year. And I wanted to get a retail perspective on the new legislation. So I'm here at Hepworth Motor Group to meet with Stephen Brighton for a brief chat about it. Hi Steve, well, thank you for joining us today, it's much appreciated, and I just wanted to chat to you about the introduction of RDE, the real driving emissions test that's due to hit the new car market in September, the second phase of WLTP. And we saw what WLTP did to the industry last year in the final quarter of 2018 and the impact that it had, and just wanted to run through what your thoughts were about that and whether you feel that similar could happen again this year with RDE.
I think it depends on the manufacturer, Phil, to be quite honest. I think most manufacturers will be better prepared this time, and it's possibly subject to the derogation.
So do you feel that derogation could help this year again with RDE?
I think derogations help because I think the manufacturers were planning for no derogation whilst they were lobbying for it. They were planning for no derogation, so the fact that there has been derogation again has helped reduce the number of vehicles affected. And certainly for the brands we represent, I don't think there's any cause for concern.
So in terms of the remainder of the year, so looking at the market in general, and how do you see that the outlook will be for the second half of the year, or H2 as we refer to it in the automotive industry? So what do you think the outlook will be for the rest of the year?
In terms of new cars, certainly in quarter three, I think you're going to see a continuing seasonalisation of the market. I think you'll see a strengthening in August, obviously probably exacerbated by derogation and WLTP2, and a weakening of September, which has been happening for a number of years now. Used car values and volumes, certainly since H2, are likely to continue to be affected by the lack of confidence, without a doubt. But I expect it to lift later in H2, and I expect the book drops which we're seeing currently to ease and return to more seasonable book drops, which will ease the pressure on the dealer network. Quarter four, No one really knows the effect of Brexit. It might have a big effect, it might not. The manufacturer will be open, it doesn't, but who knows. Moving forward, the announcement of 0% BIK on electric going forward into next year, that could well have an effect on the values of ICE-powered cars, and that's creating more and more uncertainty. See diesel continuing to fall away, and petrol being the predominant through hybrid and self-charging hybrid.
So, as you say there, you mentioned the zero BIK for EVs, and you mentioned obviously those vehicles coming back in and taking in petrol or ICE vehicles back into the sector. And do you think that could cause a problem for dealers? Because potentially, you're going to get these vehicles coming back in potentially high volumes if the government push it hard with the consumers and start to see these vehicles coming back into the sector and hitting the volume for the petrol and diesels coming into the market that may not have the customer demand for those vehicles.
Yeah, I do, and I think that could well be a challenge. In the public have a bit of a tendency in the latter few years, such as VED in 2017, to follow government policy, which isn't very well thought out. So there is a good chance that may well happen, which is outside of our control as dealers, and to a degree outside the control of the manufacturer in terms of supply.
So, well, again, Steve, thanks for joining us today. It's been a pleasure as always, and very insightful, and thanks again for joining us today.
You're welcome.
So I'll finish with 3 predictions for the months ahead. RDE is going to cause some disruption, as we could see higher than average number of registrations in the month of August, especially if manufacturers are struggling to meet the standards in time, and that could cause a return of higher volumes of pre-registration and tactical activity. In terms of the used car market, stock availability should remain healthy in the second half of the year as company car tax is confirmed and confidence returns to the fleet market. Values will remain unpredictable and dependent very much on demand, as we anticipate oversupply could ease as we move through the second half of this year. In terms of fuel, we see a downturn trend for the number of diesels in the wholesale market, especially in that 1 to 3 year age bracket, as volumes start to reduce. It is likely that values will remain in line with the market and potentially strengthen as stock begins to reduce. Well, thanks for joining me on the second Industry Insight vlog. Hope you found it interesting and insightful, and please join me again next time. If you need to get in touch with me, please contact me on the details on the screen to follow.